Welcome, traveler of time and tales. You're listening to Boring History for Sleep, the place where ancient roads wind gently into dreams and the footsteps of long-gone people echo softly in your ears. Tonight, we wander far into the past to the smoggy, sun-baked streets and shadowed alleys of the Roman Empire, but not the glorious golden marble of the emperor's courts. No, this is the Rome of grime and survival, of breadlines and bathhouses, of citizens and slaves, of markets and middens. A Rome you wouldn't last long in, but a Rome that built the bones of the world we now call our own. So get comfortable, let your body grow heavy, loosen your grip on the present, and let it fade like smoke rising from an oil lamp. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining us. And if you find yourself enjoying the soft drift of these quiet histories, consider gently tapping the subscribe button. It helps more sleepy minds find their way here. And if you'd like, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing the peaceful corners of the world where this little show drifts off to sleep. Now then, close your eyes if you'd like. Imagine the hum of a busy Roman street, sandals scraping stone, the scent of warm bread and boiling dye, and the distant sound of a legionary's horn echoing down a colonnaded road. Let us begin. Picture yourself waking not to birdsong, but to the creaking of old wood and the sharp rattle of footsteps above you. You're in a cramped room on the upper floor of a Roman insula tenement building in the heart of the city. The walls are thin. The floor is uneven. You slept on a mat or a pile of straw, if you're lucky, or perhaps directly on wooden boards worn smooth by generations of tired bodies. The sun has not yet fully risen, but already the city stirs. A child cries in the next room. Somewhere far below, a pot clangs to the ground and a man curses in Latin. Your breath is warm in the morning chill. The air carries the scent of damp plaster and smoke, always smoke. Not the crisp kind from a cozy fire, but the gritty, biting reek of hundreds of charcoal braziers still glowing in kitchens and corners across the block. You live high up near the roof, cheaper, but more dangerous. Fires climb these buildings quickly, and the stairways are narrow and unstable. Sometimes entire insulae collapse under their own weight or burn entirely overnight. But you're here for now, and so are the others. Bakers, laborers, a washerwoman, a retired soldier, faces you nod to, but rarely speak to in depth. Everyone is busy. Everyone is surviving. There is no toilet in your building. If you're fortunate, there's a public latrine nearby. If not, you carry a small pot to empty in the early dawn. Many don't bother tossing waste out the window to the street below. It's an unpleasant truth of Roman urban life. The alleyways beneath your windows often flow with filth. Your breakfast is simple and cold. Bread, perhaps slightly stale, maybe some olives or a bit of cheese if you were paid recently. Hot meals are rare unless you visit one of the tabernae or street stalls later. Water is fetched from a public fountain, carried in clay jars, down uneven stairs. You take what you need, quickly, nodding to the line of others waiting behind you, each gripping their ampra like lifelines. The city beyond your tenement bustles. Street vendors begin shouting their wares. The clatter of cartwheels rings down the stone roads, and a cohort of soldiers passes by in formation, sandals thudding in near-perfect rhythm. The streets smell of baked goods, fresh-cut herbs, manure, and urine blended into a complex aroma that is uniquely, unmistakably Roman. If you work as a laborer, your day starts early. You might haul stone for an ambitious aqueduct, mix lime for mortar, or assist at the docks. If you're a woman of the lower classes, your labor is constant and undervalued washing, mending, cleaning, selling, or serving. There is no rest, no luxury. Each task is done by hand, with time and sweat. Children play with knucklebones, or chase each other through the crowded streets, dodging between carts and slipping in muck. Education, if it comes at all, is brief and basic. For most, life is practical. Learning trades, helping with work, surviving the day. By midday, the sun blazes and the city pulses with heat. Dust swirls through the air. Voices rise in argument, in barter, in song. The forum fills with toga-clad men shouting policy and price. But you're not part of that world, not yet. Maybe not ever. You pass it by, headed elsewhere. This is a life of movement, of constant presence among crowds, of living elbow to elbow with strangers. Privacy is rare, quiet is rarer, and solitude is a luxury only the wealthy can afford. But there is community here too, patterns that repeat, rituals that comfort. You recognize faces, you know the rhythms of the day, and in that there is a kind of fragile peace. As the afternoon wanes and the heat softens, you find yourself grateful for a little shade, a small breeze, or a cup of watered wine shared with someone kind. Life is not easy here, but it moves, and you move with it. Imagine now the worn hands of a man named Gaius. He is not a senator, not a soldier, not a man of statues or scrolls. He is a cobbler, one of thousands, in the belly of Rome, stitching soles and softening leather, day in and day out. His story is not recorded in marble or ink, but it is no less real, and it begins, like so many others, in a borrowed stall under an archway near the Subura district. Gaius wakes before dawn, much like you did in the insula. His home is modest, a single room shared with his wife and 2 sons. The ceiling leaks in winter, the walls sweat in summer, but it is home, and it is his. He trained under his father, who trained under his own. Skills passed hand to hand, eye to eye. The tools are basic, an iron awl, a flat knife, a wooden last to shape the shoe. His materials come from the tannery near the river, where the hides soak in pungent pits, stirred by slaves and stained by time. The smell of curing leather is thick and permanent, embedded in his fingers, his clothes, his breath. Each day, Gaius sets up his small workbench. Customers begin to appear soon after sunrise. Some need repairs worn, laces, broken sandals, a cracked sole. Others need new pairs, soldiers preparing for campaign, merchants seeking something sturdy, a servant hoping to impress a master. Gaius listens, nods, takes measurements, and works with quiet speed. He speaks little. He learned long ago that words do not fill a purse. But he watches everything, the way people walk, how their feet wear down the leather, what makes a sandal last or fail. He knows which soldiers will return limping, which nobles will complain about a stitch barely out of place. There is artistry in what he does, and pride, though it is the quiet kind. His hands are rough, his back aches, his eyes grow tired by afternoon. But he pauses only briefly to eat a small lunch, perhaps lentils and bread, with a sip of watered wine. Sometimes he eats in the shadow of a public fountain, listening to the gossip of washerwomen and delivery boys, stories of politics, of distant wars, of gladiators and grain shipments. Gaius rarely comments. His world is smaller, more tactile. One day, a young man comes in. His boots are fine to fine. He sneers at Gaius's stall, calls him a relic. Gaius says nothing. He mends the boots, returns them without expression. The boy doesn't tip, but Gaius knows those boots won't last. He sees it in the stitching, shallow, decorative. A matter of fashion, not function. Gaius does not aspire to wealth. He has no ambition for office or command, but he dreams, in his own way, a larger stall, perhaps a better all, enough money to apprentice his sons properly, a quiet old age with a small garden, away from the smell of boiling hides. When the sun sets, he packs his tools, brushes off the scraps, and walks home along the torch-lit streets. The alleys are not safe, but he knows them well. At home, his wife boils lentils. The children play with bits of thread and scrap leather. Gaius smiles, and for a moment, the weight of the day eases. He does not know that one day his name will vanish, his stall be forgotten. But that is not what matters. What matters is the day's work, the family fed, the sandals that will carry someone just a little farther, the uncelebrated rhythm of survival, and in that there is dignity. Now let us descend. Beneath the warm stone of Rome's towering baths, beneath the mosaic corridors and marble fountains of the baths of Caracalat, lies a secret, a mystery hidden in plain sight, veiled in dust and darkness, ignored for centuries, until curious minds with lanterns and notebooks began to search where the water once ran. At first glance, the baths of Caracalla are a triumph of imperial luxury. Completed in the 3rd century, they were not merely for bathing, but for reading, exercise, philosophy, and ceremony. A place where the heat of the caldarium and the cool of the frigidarium balanced more than just temperature. They balanced the body and the spiritor, so the Romans believed. But beneath this grand public space, a web of hidden rooms unfolds. Tunnels and corridors, maintenance shafts and storage chambers, some still unexplored, and deeper still, sealed beneath layers of ash and collapse. Archaeologists in the 20th century uncovered long, narrow rooms with arched ceilings and strange ventilation, shafts far more elaborate than expected. Some thought them to be furnaces, hypocaust service halls, where slaves fed fires to keep the floors warm. Others suggested wine storage, or hidden quarters for staff who lived their lives underground. But the rooms go deeper than needed. Some are entirely cut off, no direct access, no signs of tools or soot or daily use. So the question lingers, what were they for? One theory speaks of emergency caches, imperial reserves of food and valuables, hidden away in case of revolt or siege. Another posits religious use, tied to underground cults or secret rites. The cult of Mithras, in particular, often worshipped in dark, cavernous spaces beneath the surface. Shrines have been found in similar locations, with altars carved directly into the bedrock. Still others suggest more practical purposes, cisterns for water regulation, or hidden storage for construction supplies and heating oil. Yet no debris remains, no evidence of occupation, just silence and darkness and stone. Perhaps the rooms were never finished, or perhaps they served a purpose now lost to time, known only to those who walked those hidden halls by torchlight, their footfalls muffled by damp air and quiet stone. Today, the baths above still draw tourists. Their floors echo with the shuffle of shoes. Their vaults catch the light in soft angles, but the mystery beneath remains largely sealed. The lost rooms hold their silence, their air still and heavy. And so we wonder. Not all secrets are meant to be uncovered. Some are meant to sleep quietly beneath centuries of footsteps, whispered of only when the city falls still and the dust hangs undisturbed in the shafts of golden evening light. Now we leave behind the alleyways and smoky insulae and follow the soft crunch of sandals on gravel down a quiet road, away from the crowds. Olive trees line the path, their silvery leaves swaying gently in the Mediterranean breeze. You are approaching a villa, the villa of a senator. Not in the city's crowded heart, but out in the countryside, where time seems to move a little slower. This is not the Rome of cracked clay pots and shared sponges. This is the Rome of wax tablets and personal libraries, of shaded gardens and heated baths fed by private aqueducts. Here, the air is cleaner, the noise is distant, and luxury is woven into every wall. The day begins, not with scraping footsteps overhead, but with the quiet stir of slaves opening wooden shutters to let in the light. The senator does not wake to labor, but to soft words and careful hands. His bed is wide, his sheets linen. A servant offers warm water to wash. Another brings bread, honey, and figs on a shallow bronze tray. He eats reclining, as is proper, while a literate slave reads aloud from a scrollper, perhaps a speech of Cicero or a new poem. Outside, the gardens are being swept, the fountains refilled. The senator may walk there after breakfast, his toga light across his shoulders, fingers trailing across hedges trimmed in perfect lines. He does not fetch his own water. He does not carry his own keys. Every hour of his day is cushioned by other scribes, body servants, attendants, cooks. When he leaves for the forum, a litter is carried by 6 men. In the city, people bow or make space. His presence shapes the flow of those around him. At midday, he hosts a client or two in his atrium, men of lesser status seeking favors, introductions, or scraps of patronage. He listens, nods, offers vague encouragement. His power is quiet but vast. He may influence laws. He may advise generals. He may even whisper to the emperor if he is well placed. Lunch is leisurely. A cold platter of boiled eggs, olives, and cheese. Watered wine in crystal clear glass. Afterward, he may dictate letters or receive news from his agents abroad. Trade, taxes, tensions, everything passes through his ears before it becomes policy. In the late afternoon, he reclines, again this time in his private bath, tiled with blue and green glass. The water is hot, perfumed with herbs. Musicians play softly nearby. A philosopher might be invited to speak, or an actor to perform a brief monologue in exchange for patronage. As dusk falls, the senator dines in his triclinium, formal dinner with carefully arranged guests. 3 couches around a low table, each guest reclined on one elbow, sipping and sampling. Dishes arrive in order. Dormice in honey, roasted peacock, lentils with leeks, garam-drenched fish. The feast is not rushed. Hours pass, wine flows. Conversation wanders through poetry, politics, and distant wars. And then, finally, the day softens into night. Lanterns flicker in the halls. Slaves clear the remnants of the feast. The senator retires, not to a mat or a shared bed, but to a private chamber where warmth and silence wait. He will sleep deeply, without fear of fire climbing wooden stairs or thieves slipping through open windows. His Rome is a different world, one of control, influence, and curated serenity. But even this life, padded and privileged, was no true guarantee. Politics could shift, enemies could whisper, and emperors were often fickle. Still, for now, in this moment, the senator sleeps well, and the moonlight paints his marble halls with silver silence. The sun rises a little higher now, warming the tiled roofs and pebble-strewn alleys of the city. The early morning hum becomes a steady murmur. You're walking now toward one of the many markets that dot Rome open-air spaces dense with sound and scent. Imagine yourself entering the Massaluma Roman marketplace, not with the neat order of modern shops, but with the chaotic rhythm of life lived out in public. Stone stalls stretch in uneven lines, shaded by stretched cloths or patched awnings. Vendors shout, chant, or sing their wares. Fresh olives, fat sardines, bread still warm. The ground beneath your feet is swept but never clean. Bits of fish scales shimmer in puddles from the fishmonger's stand. A woman spills a basket of figs, and a child helps her collect them while slyly pocketing one for himself. The smell is overwhelming: sharp vinegar, animal sweat, ripe fruit, briny fish, cooling bread. At first, it assaults the senses, but in time, it blends into a kind of familiar fog. You pass stalls of fresh herbs, bay leaves, mint, and thyme bundled with twine, chickpeas in clay pots, garum in little jars with wax seals, dried dates in baskets. The prices are not fixed, and bargaining is expected. It's not a question of fairness, but of performance, a social dance. Words, postures, and pretend outrage, all part of the ritual. Near the butchers, slabs of meat hang from hook-slam pig, sometimes goat. Flies are waved away with bunches of rosemary tied to sticks. A man kneels nearby, sharpening a long, thin blade. His hands are red, but his eyes are calm. The work is routine. You move on, weaving past a group of women haggling over barley. One holds a small set of bronze weights, suspicious of the vendor's scales. Another lifts a small clay oil lamp, holding it up to the sunlight to inspect the glaze. Commerce here is not cold, is thick with human connection. Every item carries a face. Off to the side, a man in a dark wool tunic writes quickly on a wax tablet, recording transactions. He glances up now and then, watching the crowd like a hawk. He may be an accountant, or a spy, or perhaps both. Children dart between carts, chasing one another. A stray dog noses at a pile of wilted greens. An older woman, wrapped in a faded shawl, sells dyed wool from a basket lined with linen. Her hands are blue-stained. She smiles, but rarely. You pause at a stall with amphorae lined in a olive oil, wine, vinegar. The vendor pours you a taste into a small cup of coarse clay. It's sharp, a little sour, but familiar. You nod. He nods. Coins clink into his dish. And so your basket fills slowly, carefully. Each item chosen with a balance of price and necessity. You will not buy what you do not need. You cannot afford to. As you leave, the noise recedes just a little. The market lives on, but your part in it is done for today. You walk home, past mosaic thresholds and sun-warmed walls, your arms full of food and your mind gently drifting. This too is Rome. Let us shift now from the dust and motion of the street to the calculated silence of politics. In this part of our journey, we meet a man whose name once echoed in the Senate, whose ambition burned like a quiet fire, and whose story slipped into shadow. Lucius Sergius Catiline, as he is often known, was born into nobility, an old patrician family, proud and poor. In Rome, this was a dangerous combination. Too little wealth to coast on reputation, too much heritage to be content with obscurity. From the beginning, he was taught to claw and climb. In his youth, he fought in the social war and served under Sulla, a ruthless dictator. In those violent days, Catiline proved himself more than willing to stain his hands. Accusations would later claim he killed his own brother-in-law during the proscriptions. Whether true or not, the rumors clung to him. As the Republic grew restless, Catiline ran for consulship, the highest elected office, more than once. He failed. Whispers said he lost because of his past, because of debts, because of enemies in high places. Catiline, ever ambitious, grew bitter. His speeches turned sharper. His supporters became more radical. Then came the conspiracy. Catiline, present in the chamber, stood and denied everything. But the room turned cold. The walls seemed to close in. That night, he left Rome. Catiline did not vanish into shame. He rode north to gather an army of disgruntled veterans, desperate debtors, rural malcontents. His rebellion took form not in speeches, but in sharpened swords. The Senate responded with force. His men, outnumbered and out-equipped, fell in rows. Catiline himself was found dead on the field, surrounded by the bodies of his loyal followers, having fought to the very end. Today, we remember Catiline less as a man and more as a symbol, a reminder of how thin the Republic's skin had grown, a reflection of a world cracking under the weight of its promises. His name became shorthand for conspiracy, for ambition unchecked, for the fear that beneath Rome's order, chaos still breathed. But if you strip away the rhetoric, the bias, the elegant condemnations of Cicero, you're left with a man ambitious, flawed, and perhaps too bold for his time, a man who tried to seize history and was instead buried by it. And so, in the quiet halls of the past, Catiline's footsteps echo faintly, not as a tyrant, not as a hero, just as a man, trying not to drown in the roaring current of Rome. Let us move south, down the coast of the Bay of Naples, to a place frozen in time. In the year 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted, casting a choking column of ash and gas miles into the air. Most remember Pompeii, but just across the water, closer to the shoreline, lay a smaller Roman town, Herculaneum. Here, the story of survival, or its absence, took on a quieter, stranger tone. Unlike Pompeii, Herculaneum was buried not in ash, but in a fast-moving wave of superheated volcanic mud, hundreds of degrees, hot, thick as concrete. It came suddenly, silently, and with finality. The entire town vanished beneath 20 meters of hardened earth. For nearly 17 centuries, it lay forgotten. In the 1980s, archaeologists began excavating the ancient shoreline of Herculaneum, and what they found was unexpected: skeletons. More than 300 of them, huddled in what had once been boathouses along the ancient beachfront. Men, women, and children, all curled together, pressed into stone-walled arches. For a long time, it was believed that most of Herculaneum's residents had escaped, that it had fared better than Pompeii. But here, beneath the hardened layers, was proof to the contrary. These individuals had sought refuge by the water, hoping to be rescued by boat. They brought jewelry, coins, even tools. One skeleton was found gripping a cloth bag still slung over the shoulder. Inside were surgical instruments, perhaps a physician. Perhaps just someone who found them in the panic. We will never know. The state of preservation is eerie. Teeth perfectly intact, bones undisturbed. In some cases, the intense heat left behind visible brain matter vitrified in an instant, turned to glass. But we speak of that delicately. The science is precise, the emotions harder to contain. Why were these people here when others had fled? Did they arrive too late? Did they believe they had time? Or were they guided by instinct to run downhill toward the sea as the mountain roared behind them? There are signs that they waited. Pieces of charred wood suggest boats once moored nearby. Did someone promise to return for them? Did they watch the sky turn black with ash, listening for the sound of oars that never came? Above the shoreline, villas with painted walls and colonnaded gardens still stand. One, the so-called House of the Deer, overlooks the bay with frozen serenity. In its cellars, amphorae still line the shelves. In its courtyard, mosaics gleam beneath a fine layer of volcanic dust. The beauty endures. The life does not. Today, Herculaneum is quieter than Pompeii, less visited, less expansive. But it speaks more softly, and sometimes more hauntingly. It is a place where mystery lingers, not in myths or symbols, but in human postures, in the angle of a spine, in the shadow of a collapsed roof beam, in the quiet question, what did they hope for in those final minutes? And what did they see before the darkness came? Let us step now into a villa near the edge of the Palatine Hillet's gates, shaded by cypress, its walls painted in vivid reds and ochres. A cool breeze flutters across the inner courtyard, rustling the petals of a potted rose. Inside, we meet a Roman matron, quietly beginning her day. Her name might be Livia, or Cornelia, or Antonia. Names that speak of lineage, of marriage alliances, of ancestors carved in stone. She is not the head of her household. That role belongs to her husband, but within these walls, her influence is deeply felt. She rises early, assisted by handmaidens who help weave her hair into elaborate braids, twist cords of dyed wool into her stola, and gently dab perfume behind her ears. Everything is deliberate. Every garment, every adornment carries silent meaning. To dress modestly but richly is its own kind of language in Rome. Her first duty is not leisure, but the household. The domus is large and complex, a miniature kingdom of slaves, stewards, cooks, tutors, and laborers. The matron oversees their schedules, manages supplies, reviews accounts, and ensures that everything runs as it should. Meals must be planned, fabrics inventoried, lamps refilled. It is work quiet, invisible, and constant. She supervises the education of her children, especially the younger ones. Lessons in Latin, Greek, rhetoric, and manners. If she is fortunate, the tutor is competent. If not, she quietly makes corrections. Later, she might visit other matrons for a gathering, a convivium, not for feasting, but for social weaving. The exchange of gossip, advice, alliances. They sit in shaded porticos, sip watered wine, and speak softly of marriages arranged, properties bought, and reputations rising or falling like the tide. In a world where men rule in the forum, women build their networks elsewhere. In public, she walks rarely and never alone, always accompanied, always veiled. To be seen too often is to invite scrutiny. Her virtue is her armor, and the whispers of others are sharp. But within the safety of her villa, she reads scrolls epic poetry or moral philosophy. She embroiders quietly, her fingers working while her mind wanders. She may dictate letters or oversee a shrine in the atrium where Larice the household gods receive fresh offerings. Her life is structured but not idle. She knows the danger of childbirth. She has lost friends to it. She may have faced it more than once herself. Each time, she prepared not just swaddling cloths, but her own will. In Rome, even noble blood does not spare you from risk. And though she cannot vote or speak in the Senate, her counsel may guide a powerful man. Behind closed doors, her opinion matters. She may steer the family fortune, shape alliances, and protect her children's futures with quiet strategy. As night falls, she dines reclining beside her husband, listening to poets or philosophers brought in for the evening. The table is lined with silver dishes, fruits, and spiced meats. Slaves move like shadows, pouring wine, clearing platters. Later, in her own chamber, she removes her ornaments, one by one. The villa grows quiet. The moonlight stretches across painted ceilings. The Roman matron is both centerpiece and sentinel, visible and hidden, praised and constrained. Her life is comfort, but not freedom, power, but not authority. She navigates it with care, strength, and a constant awareness that her fortunes are never entirely her own. And so she rests gently, deliberately, in a world that watches closely. Let's return now to the gritty pulse of Rome's everyday too, a place most citizens knew by smell before sight. You are approaching a Phalonica, a Roman laundry, not the soft hum of machines or the faint scent of detergent, but a laborious, foot-worn, open-air workshop, where tunics are not washed so much as reclaimed. Imagine a courtyard hemmed in by stone walls, lined with troughs and basins. The air is heavy with the scent of ammonia, lye, wet wool, and something sharper still. This is not a place of comfort, it is a place of work. Constant, soaking, stomping work. You are one of the Phalones, the launderers, slaves, freedmen, or the very poor. The job is simple in description, but endless in effort. You arrive before dawn, when the air is still cool. Tunics, cloaks, and linens are delivered in piles, often stiff with grime, sweat, or worse. The garments of soldiers, traders, senators, and servants, they all pass through this place. First, the garments are soaked in vats filled with water and urine collected from public urinals strategically placed throughout the city. The ammonia in the liquid loosens dirt and oils. You step in barefoot, bracing against the basin's edge, and begin to tread the fabric rhythmically, over and over, pressing and lifting, the sound of splashing joining the chorus of early Roman labor. After soaking, garments are transferred to rinse tanks. Then comes the pounding clothes beaten against stone or scrubbed with lye soap and wooden paddles. Stains are scraped away with shards of pottery. Every fiber is scoured, wrung, and aired. The work never pauses. Nearby, another worker mixes fuller's earth-fine clay used to brighten white garments. It is packed and patted into cloth, then brushed off after drying. The result is clothing that gleams, especially for the wealthy, who expect their tunics to dazzle. There is pride in doing it well. Customers notice. A well-cleaned toga speaks louder than a careless word. The best Phalones earn loyalty. The worst are replaced without ceremony. A small office nearby handles records, names scratched onto tablets, payment noted in coin or credit, sometimes bartered goods. Phalones are not rich, but the established ones may earn enough to live modestly and, in time, open their own stall. The work is physical, repetitive, and unrelenting. Your hands grow raw, your feet pruned and pale from hours in liquid. The smell clings, no matter how many times you bathe. But there is something rhythmic about it, something slow and grounding. The press of fabric beneath your soles, the routine of soap and stones, the hiss of steam as cloth dries over hot tiles. At midday, you rest in the shade, sipping tepid water from a ceramic cup. Your body aches, but your mind is calm. The world is reduced to cloth and motion, water and breath, and when the sun sinks and the last tunic is folded, you step, a weight tired but steady. The Phalanca quiets, the steam fades, and the city exhales around you. In ancient Rome, even the simplest act, washing clothes, is a link in the chain of empire. Quiet, unseen, but essential. Now let us turn to the imperial palace. 2 marble halls lined with statues, bronze doors polished bright, and the echoing footsteps of guards in gleaming armor. And at the heart of it, his real name was Marcus Aurelius Severus Antoninus Augustus, but history remembers him by the nickname tied to the Gallic cloak. He favored the caracalla, a military garment, practical, stark, much like the man himself. Caracalla rose to power not gently but violently. He was the son of Septimius Severus, a North African-born emperor who had clawed his way to the purple by sword and political calculation. When Septimius died in 211 CE, he left the empire to both his sons Caracalla and Geta, a joint rule, an uneasy compromise. It did not last. Tensions rose quickly. The 2 brothers refused to eat together. They avoided appearing in public side by side. Their followers whispered threats and watched each other closely. And then, just months into their rule, Caracalla acted. In a private meeting arranged by their mother, in a palace chamber meant to encourage peace, Caracalla ordered Geta murdered. He did not hesitate. In the days that followed, over 20,000 people were killed, supporters of Geta, suspected sympathizers, and anyone who questioned the official story. Their names were erased from inscriptions, their faces scratched from frescoes. It was more than murder, it was damnatio memoria, the Roman practice of obliterating someone from history. Caracalla now ruled alone. His reign was marked by contradictions. He was brutal, but not chaotic. Hated by elites, but oddly popular with the army. He granted Roman citizenship to nearly every free man in the Empyrean Act that reshaped Roman law and taxes forever. He raised soldiers' pay, expanded veterans' benefits, and personally campaigned along the borders of Germania and Parthia. He also built one of his most famous projects, was the Baths of Caracalla, vast, opulent, and enduring. Even today, their ruins stand tall in Rome, a silent testament to imperial ambition. But Caracalla's paranoia never left him. He traveled with a large personal guard, surrounded himself with spies, and moved constantly. In 217 CE, while relieving himself along a roadside during a campaign in the east, he was stabbed to death by one of his own soldiers, perhaps with the knowledge of his Praetorian prefect. No grand tomb, no funeral games, just silence. His body burned in haste, his name reviled, and yet he left marks that never faded. His citizenship edict rewrote the legal structure of the empire. His bath complex reshaped urban architecture. His reign, though brief and blood-soaked, was a turning point, one of the clearest signs that the imperial system, so carefully built, was beginning to fracture. Caracalla's face appears on coins, stern and unsmiling, his eyes carved with a sharpness that suggests he saw enemies everywhere. Perhaps he did. He was not a kind ruler, but he was undeniably Roman. Now, let us step into a quiet, forgotten corner of Roman superstition. Beneath the grand temples and legal proclamations, beneath the marble and order, there was another Rome of whispered names, scribbled malice, and quiet revenge. This is the world of the curse tablets. Known to scholars as defictions, these small sheets of lead were inscribed with dark wishes curses, then folded, pierced with nails, and hidden away in graves, wells, and temples. They were not rare. Thousands have been found. They were part of everyday life, especially among those with no other form of recourse. A typical curse tablet was about the size of a playing card. The writing was often rushed, jagged, squeezed into the metal surface by stylus. Sometimes the names were clear, those of rivals, thieves, unfaithful lovers, or courtroom opponents. Sometimes the curse invoked gods of the underworld, Hecate, Pluto, the spirits of the dead. Imagine a woman, perhaps a weaver, wronged in a legal dispute. She cannot bribe a magistrate. She cannot speak in the Senate, but she can write. And so, by lamplight, she scratches words into soft lead, folding her hurt into the ancient traditions of binding spells. Bind the tongue of Marcus, who wronged me. May his lies return upon him. May his strength falter. May the gods turn their gaze away from him. Some tablets were wrapped with hair, cloth, or nail clippings, personal tokens meant to amplify the spell. Others were written backward or in stylized nonsense, believed to heighten their mystery or to confuse the target's soul. Often, they were buried in the tombs of the recently dead. The idea was simple, though haunting. The restless spirits below could carry your curse into the realm of shadows and deliver it more effectively than the living ever could. Wells, too, were common depository symbols of descent into the unseen. Not all tablets were spiteful. Some were desperate prayers for love, fortune, or health. But even these carried a tinge of force. May Flavia fall for me and none other. May her dreams be filled with my face. May she forget all others. Modern archaeologists have uncovered these slivers of spite in every corner of the empire, from Britain to Egypt, from Gaul to the very heart of Rome. Many are now preserved in museums, carefully displayed under glass, their scratched words still legible after 2,000 years. They are not spectacular objects, no gold, no grandeur, just gray lead, bent and pierced, holding fragile hopes and quiet wrath, but they speak. They speak of a world where justice was distant, where fate seemed negotiable, and where the boundaries between gods and ghosts, the living and the dead, were thinner than we imagine. In the stillness of a tomb, at the bottom of a dry well, folded in the shadows of a forgotten shrine, the curse waits. We return now to the gentle rustle of togas, the polished floors of an atrium, and the quiet ceremony of Roman patronage. Imagine yourself standing in the entry hall of a wealthy Roman citizen's domos. The floor is a mosaic of black and white tiles, depicting myth, nature, or geometric patterns. Water trickles softly into a shallow basin at the center, reflecting the beams of morning light. Around you are other men, freedmen, tradesmen, minor officials, all waiting in silence. You are among the clientes, And this is the salutation, the formal morning greeting of a patronus or patron, a ritual of loyalty and dependence, as ancient as the Republic itself. The patron is not an emperor, nor even a senator, but he is wealthy and connected. He holds favors like coins, and to be in his shadow is to step into the glow of opportunity. Each morning, he receives visitors in his atrium. Each offers a polite greeting, sometimes accompanied by a small gift or flattering words. In return, the patron may offer advice, assistance, legal support, or, most importantly, introductions. Sometimes, a patron provides a daily allowance, a small purse of coins, or food parcels. In exchange, you may be asked to vote a certain way, deliver a message, or simply follow him through the forum as a mark of status. A visible entourage means influence. It is currency. He moves slowly, speaking softly to each client. A nod here, a short phrase there. You listen closely. His time is limited. His memory is sharp. He notes who arrives, who flatters too much, who speaks without value. The atrium thins as the morning wears on. A few clients accompany him to the forum, walking just behind his left shoulder. You are not chosen today, but your presence was noticed. This relationship is not friendship. It is not feudal servitude either. It is more complex, woven with reciprocity, pride, and calculation. The patron is powerful, but not immune to social pressure. If he ignores his clients, word spreads, his reputation frays, and so the dance continues. Later, the patron may host a small luncheon in his peristyle garden. Just a few close allies. Wine is poured. Dried fruits are passed. Laughter is measured. Here, politics and favors blur into pleasantries. One guest asks about a cousin needing placement in a minor post. Another suggests a new business venture in the provinces. The patron listens. He does not promise, but he hints. For those without birth or wealth, patronage is a ladder. For those already on top, it is scaffolding. As the sun shifts, casting long shadows across marble columns, the guests begin to leave. The patron remains seated, sipping a final cup of wine, surrounded by quiet. He is not a tyrant, not a demigod, but in this world, his voice opens doors. And so you return home hopeful, cautious, rehearsing your words for tomorrow's salutatio. In a city of millions, relationships are your map, and patrons the key to survival. Step now into a kitchen, not a modern one, bright and gleaming, but a cramped, smoky alcove tucked behind the dining rooms of a Roman domus. Whether part of a middle-class home or a wealthy villa, the essentials are the same: clay, smoke, iron, and heat. You duck beneath a low arch. The air is thick with steam and the scent of charred oil. There is no chimney. Smoke finds its way out slowly, clinging to walls, blackening rafters. The hearth is small, sunken slightly into the stone floor, where coals glow like sullen eyes. A cook is already at work, hair tied back, with a strip of linen, sleeves dark with oil. They move quickly, with muscle memory rather than thought. The kitchen is not a place of peace. It is a place of constant motion. Clay pots simmer on bronze tripods. One holds lentils and leaks in salted broth. Another bubbles with a stew of goat. You may wrinkle your nose, but for many Romans, that pungent aroma signals nourishment. There are no timers here, no thermometers, only smell, sound, texture. The cook stirs with a long wooden paddle, lifts the lid, listens to the hiss. The ingredients are seasonal, no refrigeration, no imports beyond what survives the journey by sea or road. Freshness is a matter of urgency. Bread must be baked daily. Milk spoils within hours. A slave boy grinds grain in a rotary millitupi stone, rotated by hand. The flour is coarse, mixed with water, and baked on a flat iron plate over the coals. Sometimes a little honey is added, or crushed poppy seeds, but most loaves are plain. Near the wall stands an amphora of oil. Another holds vinegar. Dried herbs hang from the ceiling in bundles oregano, mint, coriander. Their scent cuts through the smoke in gentle waves. A jar of olives, preserved in brine, waits beside a board, stained from years of chopping. Knives are few, carefully sharpened. Metal is expensive. Platters are wood or ceramic. A mortar and pestle rests in the corner, where garlic and pine nuts are mashed into a coarse paste. As the meal nears completion, the cook arranges dishes by course. Romans often eat in sequences, as like boiled eggs or stuffed dormice, followed by mains of meat, fish, or beans, and ending with fruits, nuts, or sweetened pastries. Simpler homes mirror the pattern with fewer ingredients. There is pride in the preparation, even without recognition. A good cook can elevate poor ingredients. A poor one can ruin the finest cuts. In some households, talented slaves are prized in, even feared by those who rely on their skill. The food is carried out one dish at a time. The kitchen falls momentarily silent, save for the popping of embers. The cook wipes sweat from their brow with the back of a hand. Another meal completed. Another day measured not by hours, but by hunger and heat. And as the fire dies down, shadows dance along the soot-dark walls, and the kitchen returns to its quiet rhythm of waiting. Tonight, we turn not to generals or emperors, but to a writer, a man whose pen preserved the mood and pulse of a fading Rome. Pliny the Younger, not a warrior, not a conqueror, but a man of letters, law, and carefully measured words. Born around 61 CE, Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus was raised in privilege. His uncle Pliny the Elder was a scholar and admiral famous for his encyclopedic mind and tragic death during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The younger Pliny inherited not only his name, but his passion for writing and inquiry. From a young age, Pliny was methodical. He wrote letters, hundreds of them crafted with care, polished with precision. But these were no ordinary correspondences. They were small portraits of life, observations on Roman villas, friendships, Senate debates, the nature of work, and the fleeting joys of everyday rituals. His letters provide us with some of the clearest windows into elite Roman life during the 1st century. They are not dramatic, they are not epic, but they are deeply human. He wrote of his country estates, how he tended his garden, how he arranged his library, how he enjoyed the silence of a winter storm from the comfort of a warm study. He wrote of philosophy, of duty, of modest ambition, and he wrote, famously, of the eruption that killed his uncle. In that letter, addressed to the historian Tacitus, Pliny described the sky darkening, the earth trembling, and the waves retreating from the shore. He was a teenager then, staying at Misenum across the bay. His account is calm, precise, eerily detached. He does not exaggerate. He simply records, letting the facts speak with their own weight. As a man, Pliny held many posts: lawyer, senator, governor. He governed Bithynia Pontus in Asia Minor, and wrote letters to Emperor Trajan, seeking advice on matters great and small. One of these letters, asking what to do about local Christians, has survived. offering a rare, measured glimpse into early imperial policy toward that growing sect. Unlike so many of his peers, Pliny never chased glory. He was not brilliant, but he was diligent, not flamboyant, but steady. He believed in public service, in scholarship, in the quiet duties of a Roman citizen. And though his career was respectable, it is his words that endure. In one letter, he writes of waking early, reading by lamplight, taking a walk through dew-covered gardens, dictating to a scribe, and enjoying a light meal with friends. There is no battle, no scandal, just a life, lived well, recorded with care. Pliny the Younger died around 113 CE. The exact details are lost, but his letters, more than 200 of them, remained, copied and preserved through centuries of change. A soft-spoken echo from a world that no longer stands. And in that, perhaps, he succeeded better than most. Now we descend once more, not into a tomb or sewer, but into a sacred silence, buried beneath layers of time. Beneath the modern church of San Clemente in Rome lies a puzzle one temple stacked above another, history built like sediment. At the very bottom lies the Mithraeum, a small, dark chamber carved from stone, lit once by oil lamps now long extinguished. The room is narrow, rectangular, with a vaulted ceiling and a central aisle flanked by benches. At the far end stands a low altar, and behind it, carved into relief, the god Mithras' gaze calm, his posture frozen in eternal ritual. He slays a bull. This image repeats across Mithraic temples throughout the empire. Mithras, dagger in hand, knee pressing the bull's back, cloak flaring behind him, eyes turned away as if looking past the moment. A snake coils near the blood, a dog laps at it, a scorpion clings to the bull's genitals. Symbols layered, meanings uncertain. Mithraism was a mystery religion, one of many that flourished in the Roman world. Its origins lie east of the empire, likely in Persia, but its Roman form was uniquely adapted. It was exclusive, secretive, reserved almost entirely for men, especially soldiers, traders, and imperial bureaucrats. No sacred texts survive, no public sermons, only scattered clues, altars, iconography, and brief mentions in skeptical commentaries. The rituals of Mithraism remain largely hidden, their meanings debated even today. We know that initiates underwent a series of 7 grades each, named after a celestial being: raven, nymphus, soldier, lion, Persian, heliodromus, and finally, father. Progression required tests, oaths, perhaps symbolic meals, or staged trials, but we can only guess. What we do know is that Mithraea were built like caves, windowless, enclosed, meant to mimic the primal world. Meals were eaten there, lamps placed in carved niches. The space was meant to evoke the cosmos, the birth of light from darkness. Beneath San Clemente, this chamber still waits. It was discovered beneath a 4th century basilica, which itself sits beneath a 12th century church. Each generation of Romans built upon the last, layering faith atop faith, from pagan rites to Christian masses to modern liturgy, all within a single footprint of ground. When you stand in the Mithraeum, the silence is heavy. The ceiling presses low. You feel not just time, but secrecy, the sense that here, long ago, men whispered words never meant for open air. Why did Mithraism fade? Perhaps it was too closed, too secretive. Christianity offered community, salvation, family. Mithraism, mystery, and hierarchy. When the empire turned Christian, it outlawed such cults. and the temples were abandoned, sealed, forgotten, buried, and yet they endure. Beneath churches, beneath fields, beneath office buildings, carved in stone, patient. Let us turn now to a quieter corner of the villa, where the voices are softer and the scale smaller, though no less structured. A Roman child of the elite, rising gently into a world of control, tradition, and carefully arranged expectations. This child is not born into freedom, not entirely. They are born into duty, into a long line of ancestors whose painted busts watch silently from the household shrine. Their name is not only theirs, it carries the weight of legacy. The day begins early, even for the young. A slave enters the room as dawn presses against the shuttered windows. Clothes are brought, teeth are wiped with wool soaked in honeyed vinegar. Hair is brushed and bound. The child is not left to dress or wander at will. Even leisure must be earned, and even innocence must be civilized. Boys and girls are treated differently from the start. Boys are taught to be orators, soldiers, heirs. Girls are prepared for marriage, for household management, for a life lived at the edges of public life. But in these early years, their routines often overlap. In the atrium, lessons begin. If the family is wealthy enough, a pedagogical-educated slave, often Greek, oversees the child's daily instruction. He is not soft. His job is not only to teach, but to shape, to correct posture, to restrain impulse, to enforce the rules of Roman virtue, modesty, discipline, and obedience. Reading begins with wax tablets and styluses, Latin and Greek. They memorize maxims, recite aloud, trace letters again and again until the curves and corners embed themselves in muscle and memory. Mathematics follows. Then rhetoric, simple arguments at first, questions of honor, fairness, clever turns of phrase. A Roman child must not only think, but speak well, to sway, to stand tall in the forum, someday, without flinching. In the afternoon, the child might walk with their tutor to a nearby library or observe their father receiving clients. They are not expected to understand yet, only to absorb, to witness. Meals are taken separately. Usually, children eat simply porridge, bread, small bits of fruit or egg, rarely meat, rarely indulgence. The appetite must not grow before the character. Occasionally, there is play. A hoop rolled down the corridor, carved knucklebones tossed like dice, a wooden doll with painted eyes, but always beneath a watchful gaze, always brief. Discipline is constant, rewards are rare, affection is subdued, expressed through approval rather than softness. The Roman ideal is not to be coddled, but hardened. Evenings are quiet. The child may sit at the feet of their parents, listening to stories of ancestors, gods, or virtue. They might watch as adults share wine, keeping silent unless spoken to. And when sleep comes, it comes early. In a chamber bare but clean, with a single oil lamp flickering against the plaster walls. There is comfort here, yes, warmth, food, security, but freedom is not one of them. A Roman child of the elite grows not like a wildflower, but like a cypress tree, trained, bound into shape, and in time they will carry that shape into the world, bearing it like a shield. Let us now enter one of the most familiar yet peculiar corners of Roman public life, places where privacy dissolved into routine, where social classes met shoulder to shoulder, and where the necessities of the body were shared openly. The public latrines and baths. Imagine yourself walking into a stone structure, its entry framed by worn columns. The scent hits first, pungent, earthy, sour from use and age. The latrine is large, rectangular, and remarkably open. A bench of smooth stone lines the walls, punctuated at regular intervals by round holes. Beneath the seats, a continuous flow of water carries away waste. There are no dividers, no stalls, no doors. You sit next to strangers, artisans, slaves, merchants, even senators, each attending to the same basic need. The Romans were less concerned with modesty than function. For them, these spaces were practical, even social. Conversations continued, deals were made, jokes exchanged. To clean oneself, you used a sponge fixed to the end of a stick, called a tersorium. After use, it was rinsed in a shared gutter of water running through the room. The idea of personal hygiene was different, focused more on communal maintenance than individual sterility. Yet the latrines were not merely pragmatic. They were a statement of Roman engineering. Aqueducts fed them, channels drained them, and some were even adorned with mosaics and small sculptures. A reminder that even waste was managed with Roman efficiency. But if the latrines were utilitarian, the baths were aspirational. The Thermae public baths were palatial in comparison. You enter through a vestibule, hand your garments to an attendant, and step into a complex of chambers designed for both cleansing and leisure. First, the apodidium, or changing room. Then, perhaps the palestra, a courtyard for light, exercise, grappling, throwing balls, stretching. Afterward, a visit to the tepidarium, a warm room where your body adjusts to the rising heat. Then comes the caldarium, the hot bath. Here, the air shimmers with steam. The pool glows faintly beneath oil lamps. Your skin prickles as you sink into the water. Around you, others lounge, chat, or quietly sweat. An attendant scrapes your skin with a curved metal tula, stridular, moving oil and grime. There is no soap, only olive oil, heat, and abrasion. Later, you may visit the frigidarium, a cold plunge to close your pores. The shock of it seizes the breath, but leaves you oddly refreshed. The bathhouse is not just a hygiene center. It is a social hub. Men and women come not only to bathe, but to gossip, to do business, to relax. Food may be sold nearby. Musicians might play in the background. Philosophers may argue quietly in corners. Even the poorest Romans, if they could afford the entrance for, had a generous patron, could experience this luxury. But luxury does not mean cleanliness by modern standards. The water is not filtered. The stridules are reused. The floors are slick with oil, sweat, and time. And yet, for the people of Rome, this was civility. To be bathed, scraped, warmed, and cooled was to be Roman. As you leave, your skin tingles. The city feels less harsh, the stone less cold. And for a moment, you carry the warmth of the bath with you into the dusty streets and beyond. Now we drift toward a shadowed figure, one who moved through the imperial courts with grace, intelligence, and deep, deliberate ambition. Agrippina the younger, mother of an emperor, sister to another, niece, wife, exile, and survivor. Her story is one of power, carved from the narrowest margins Rome would allow a woman. Agrippina was born in 15 CE, daughter of Germanicus, a beloved generaland. Agrippina the elder, granddaughter of Augustus himself. Her lineage shimmered with promise and threat. As a girl, she watched her mother fall from favor and die in exile. As a young woman, She learned that the margins of imperial life were thin and always shifting. Her first marriage was political, her second strategic. She bore one son, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbes, who would later become Nero. She protected him fiercely. Agrippina returned to the spotlight when her uncle, Emperor Claudius, took her as his fourth wife. It was a union of calculation, not sentiment. Through this marriage, she positioned Nero as heir over Claudius's own son. She mastered the art of indirect control, appearing dignified, loyal, and removed, while arranging alliances, guiding appointments, and crafting Nero's image. Coins were struck with her face beside her son's, a rarity, a statement, and for a time it worked. When Claudius died by natural causes or poisoned mushrooms, depending on which historian you asked, Nero became emperor. Agrippina stood behind him, the empress mother. She attended Senate meetings, received ambassadors. Her word carried weight. But as Nero aged, the relationship strained. He chafed at her control. She resisted fading into the background. He pushed her aside. She returned. Their conflict simmered beneath the surface of courtly rituals, and then it broke. Nero plotted to kill her not once, but several times. First, a collapsing ceiling, then a sabotaged ship designed to sink at sea. Agrippina survived both. Finally, in 59 CE, he sent assassins to her villa. She was stabbed. Some say she instructed them where to strike, exposing her abdomen, saying, "Strike the womb that bore him." Her death was not forgotten. It lingered around Nero, staining his rule, though he later attempted public reconciliation with the Senate and games to distract the people. Her ghost remained an emblem of ambition, of maternal control, of the dangerous intimacy of Roman power. Agrippina's story is not simply tragic. It is a mirror to Rome itself, layered, ruthless, proud. She lived in a world not designed for her ascent, and yet she climbed, adapted, and endured it. She didn't, and still, her legacy moves through the pages of history, not as a footnote, but as a force. Let us now travel to the edge of the ancient sea, to the town of Herculaneum once more. But this time, not to its shoreline skeletons or quiet streets, but to a villa. A sprawling, opulent villa, believed to have belonged to the family of Lucius Calpurnius Piso, the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. This is the Villa of the Papyri. It stretches along the coastline, its lower terraces cascading down toward the now buried shore. When it was uncovered in the 18th century, it stunned those who saw its columns, its gardens, its marble statuary, all remarkably preserved beneath the hardened layers of volcanic mud left by the eruption of Vesuvius. But the true wonder was hidden deeper. A library, the Villa of the Papyri, remains, the only known surviving library from the classical world, still in situ. Its scrolls, not copied into medieval manuscripts, but buried as they were. Hundreds of tightly packed papyrus rolls, blackened by heat and pressure, preserved not in ink and parchment, but as fragile carbon shadows. At first, they were mistaken for charcoal. When scholars realized what they had found, they began carefully unrolling the scrolls, using damp cloth, blades, and sometimes even chemicals. Many were damaged or destroyed. Some crumbled under the breath of air. Others revealed faint writing, mostly in Greek, some in Latin treatises on Epicurean philosophy, science, and ethics. The author, Philodemus, a Greek philosopher from the 1st century BCE, features prominently. His works on music, rhetoric, and the nature of the gods hint at a refined and thoughtful patron, someone who sought knowledge not for public display, but for private reflection. But the library is only partially uncovered. Beneath the villa, beneath sealed corridors and inaccessible rooms, researchers believe more scrolls remain, possibly thousands. Perhaps poetry, lost plays, or the vanished histories of early Rome, we do not know. Modern technology has offered new hope. In recent years, scientists have used higher resolution, CT scanning, and machine learning to virtually unroll unopened scrolls, revealing ghostly traces of ink beneath the blackened layers. Progress is slow, delicate, and precise. And so the villa waits. It waits in silence, beneath layers of earth and centuries. A Roman library, not looted, not copied, but paused, though the reader had simply stepped away for a moment, leaving a scroll open on the table. The eruption closed the covers. Time sealed them. And now, in quiet laboratories and careful hands, those lost voices are beginning to whisper again. Imagine that thoughts, once scratched in ink by candlelight, buried by fire and ash, now blinking softly back into light. A library that could reshape our understanding of the ancient world, still locked behind stone and silence. Rome speaks still, but often we must learn to listen in new ways. Now we enter the evening hours, when torches flicker against painted walls and the scent of roasted meats drifts down quiet porticos. Tonight, you are a guest at the banquet of a wealthy Roman host, a convivium not. The dining room, or triclinium, is arranged with low couches around a central table. The guests recline on their left elbows, their sandals removed to free their right hands for eating. Slaves circulate quietly, adjusting cushions, pouring wine, and ensuring that no guest lacks for attention. This is no casual supper. It is carefully composed. Each guest has been chosen, some for influence, others for entertainment, and a few for obligation. Where you recline reflects your status. The upper couch, the locus consularis, is for the honored guest. The farther you are from it, the less important you are, and everyone notices. The table is set, not with plates, but with platters of food served in sequence. The gustaccio, or appetizer course, might include eggs, olives, oysters, or salad with herbs. Wine is served, mixed with water. Strength and flavor depend on the host's taste and generosity. Conversation flows in low tones. Philosophy, poetry, recent Senate debates, scandal. Topics shift gracefully, following the currents of appetite and interest. The host plays his role with ease, steering gently, allowing laughter when appropriate, offering quiet correction when needed. The prima mensa follows roasted meats, fish, stews in rich sauces, dormice stuffed with nuts, boiled crane, peacock with sauces of honey and vinegar. Garum, the fermented fish sauce, appears on nearly everything. Its pungency is prized. Slaves bring water for rinsing hands between courses. The floor is mosaic, but covered with cloth to catch spills. In the background, musicians play a gentle melody on lyre and flute. A poet may recite a few verses. A juggler performs briefly before stepping back into the shadows. The final course, the secunda mens, offers sweetened fruits, nuts, and pastries, dates stuffed with almonds, honey-glazed fritters. Cups of strong wine are poured, no longer diluted. Laughter grows louder. Some guests grow bold. Others excuse themselves quietly. Not all banquets are equal. Some are extravagant to the point of absurdity: silver dishes, live animals, fountains of wine. Others, more restrained, aim to display refinement rather than wealth. But always there is performance, always hierarchy, and always the quiet calculation of reputation. The evening stretches on. Oil lamps cast long shadows. Outside, the city quiets. Inside, the air is thick with warmth, perfume, and the murmurs of full bellies. When you leave, you do so carefully. Thank the host, compliment the food, make note of your seating. Everything is remembered. For the Roman elite, even a meal is a statement. And as you step into the cool night air, you carry not just the taste of figs and wine, but the knowledge that in this world, nothing even leisures without meaning. Now the sky has darkened. The last warmth of the sun slips from the rooftops, and a different Rome begins to stir quieter, rougher, cloaked in flickering shadows. You find yourself walking through a narrow street just off the Forum, your sandals echoing against the paving stones. The day's bustle has thinned. The shops are shuttered. The barbers have cleaned their razors. The cloth stalls are folded and tied. But Rome does not sleep. In the wealthier districts, households light oil lamps and gather near hearths. In the poorer wards, firelight glows behind patched wooden shutters. Here and there, a dog barks. A cart creaks slowly by, driven by a man bundled in a rough cloak. He whistles to himself. The sound floats and fades. Public street lighting exists only in the most central parts of the city, and, even there, it is sparse. Most neighborhoods are dark. If you must be out at night, you carry a lantern or hire a guide who knows the streets. The paving is uneven. The refuse from the dayfish bones, broken amphorae, food scraps is still there, scattered in corners. You pass a public fountain. Water still flows, but the chatter of the day is gone. Its steps are slick with moss. Nearby, a pair of boys dart between doorways, laughing in whispers. One carries a basket. They disappear down an alley. Graffiti covers the walls, some political, some poetic, some crude. Painted layers overlap scratched ones. They tell of gladiators, shopkeepers, lovers, and long-forgotten jokes. Even in darkness, the voices of the city remain. A figure ahead pauses at a door, knocks softly, and slips inside. Possibly a tavern, possibly a brothel. The lines blur at night. You step aside as a watchman approaches. The vigils roams, fire brigade turned, night patrol walk in pairs, carrying wooden staves. Their job is to deter fire, theft, and trouble. They nod at you, but watch you closely as they pass. Night in Rome belongs to the cautious. Though laws exist, enforcement is inconsistent. Fights break out. Drunkenness is common. Thieves and pickpockets move more freely. Most respectable citizens avoid the streets after dark unless absolutely necessary. In some quarters, musicians still play soft flute or lyre, drifting from courtyards where small gatherings linger over wine. Elsewhere, you hear arguments, shouted names, a crash of pottery, then silence again. You quicken your pace. A narrow stair leads you up to your insula. You climb carefully. The boards creak beneath your feet. A neighbor opens their door briefly, squints, then retreats without a word. Inside, your lamp flickers. You bolt the door. Outside, Rome continues to breathe, to churn, to whisper its thousand nighttime stories. And so ends another day. The darkness wraps the city like a woolen cloak, frayed at the edges, but heavy and warm. Let us now shift to a dim, quiet chamber in a villa just outside Rome, where oil lamps flicker against smooth walls, and the sound of sandals echoes faintly through the halls. Here, in his final hours, sits Lucius Annaeus Seneca, philosopher, playwright, and former advisor to Emperor Nero. He was born in Corduba, in Hispania, around 04 BCE, and raised in Rome, where he studied rhetoric and Stoic philosophy. Over the years, he would become one of the sharpest minds of the age, known for his wit, his moral reflections, and his ability to navigate the treacherous currents of imperial politics. His rise was careful, his influence vast. As Nero's tutor and later advisor, Seneca helped steer the young emperor's early policies, encouraging moderation, restraint, and justice. But Nero changed, and power grew darker. Seneca, ever the philosopher, gradually withdrew from public life. He wrote of virtue, of simplicity, of preparing the mind for hardship. His essays and letters spoke of death not as something to be feared, but to be faced with dignity. But politics has a long memory. In 65 CE, a plot to assassinate Nero was uncovered, the so-called Pisonian conspiracy. Whether Seneca was involved remains unclear. He was not arrested, he was not tried, he was simply ordered to die, and so he obeyed. His wife, Paulina, tried to join him in death. He reportedly tried to dissuade her, but when she refused, she, too, opened her veins. Both were carried to their respective chambers. Seneca's friends wept, slaves trembled. The mood was not panic, but solemnity. His veins opened, he bled slowly. The flow was weak. Age and illness had thinned his body. He was moved to a warm bath to hasten the process. Still, he lingered. Still, he spoke. Tacitus, the historian, tells us that Seneca dictated calm words to his scribes, even as his life drained away. He did not curse Nero. He did not cry out. He simply lived, and then died, as he had written one should deliberately, without fear, in accordance with nature. Paulina, miraculously, survived. Her wounds were bound, perhaps by imperial order. She would live on, pale and silent, her spirit seemingly dimmed. Seneca's writings endured. His letters to Lucilius, his tragedies, and his essays would shape Stoic thought for generations. In them, he spoke of living with intention, of accepting fate, of mastering desire. He urged simplicity in wealth, courage in adversity, and calm in the face of chaos. And in his death, he lived those words. Today, Seneca is remembered not only for what he wrote, but for how he faced his end. His name is whispered in the same breath as Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, a trio of Stoics who weathered empire with clarity and quiet strength. In that villa, as the lamps dimmed and the city quieted beyond its walls, a voice was silenced, not in fury, but in stillness, and the silence, in its way, was complete. Let us wander now to the edge of ancient Rome, where the Via Appia begins its long stretch southward. Here, among cypress trees and cracked stones, tombs line the roadside monuments to both the famous and the forgotten. But one, in particular, stands out. The tomb of Marcus Virgilius Eurysaces, a baker, not a consul, not a general, a freedman who made his fortune with flour and fire. His tomb is massive, boldly placed at a bustling crossroads where all could see. It defies modesty, its message chiseled into the very stone. This is the monument of Marcus Virgilius Eurysaces, baker, provider of bread, a man of bread-not bloodline. The structure is rectangular, made of concrete and travertine, once covered with gleaming stucco. But what draws the eye is the repeating series of circular shapes across its facade believed to be representations of grain measuring vessels or kneading basins, a declaration of his trade made permanent. Along the sides, a sculpted frieze runs like a ribbon carved in low relief. It tells a quiet story, not of war or politics, but of process. Men hauling sacks of flours, others kneading dough in great troughs, loaves baking in domed ovens. The final scene shows coins being counted, a silent nod to success. No gods, no battles, just bread. Eurysaces was once enslaved, his name a mix of Roman and Greek hints. At this, upon manumission, he gained citizenship, married well, and built a business that fed thousands. His decision to spend his wealth on a tomb so large, so prominent, was bold, even controversial. To the Roman elite, it may have seemed vulgar. To his peers, it was inspiration. A reminder that even those born with nothing could carve permanence in stone. But this tomb is also a mystery. Nearby, a second burial may belong to his wife, Atistia. A simple inscription suggests she was cremated, her ashes once held in a breadbasket-shaped urn. Whether this is poetic embellishment or truth, we cannot be certain. The urn is now lost. The story remains. The tomb itself has survived despite centuries of decay, invasion, and rebuilding. For a time, it was incorporated into Rome's medieval walls, hidden beneath towers and fortifications. Rediscovered later, it was preserved as a curiosity and industrial monument in a city of temples. Today, the tomb of Eurysaces stands exposed again, defiant and oddly modern. It tells us that history is not only the story of emperors, that monuments can rise not just from conquest, but from work, from flour and fire, and the rhythm of kneading hands. And in the quiet space beside a road once crowded with carts and chatter, the baker's message endures, that even in Rome, the humblest labor could leave a mark that would not crumble with time. Let us enter now. The quiet halls of Roman legal life, not the dramatic courtrooms of spectacle and oration, but the methodical world of the jurist, a figure both revered and understated, whose influence shaped law not through power, but through parchment. Imagine a man seated in a shaded study, morning light slanting across shelves of rolled scrolls. His name might be Gaius, Ulpian, or Papinian names, still cited by scholars centuries later. But to his neighbors, he is simply the ius consultacy, man of law. He is not a judge, nor a senator. He holds no magistrate's office. Instead, he advises, writes, clarifies. He interprets the dense web of Roman law for those who wield it. And in that, he wields something subtler, influence. His morning begins early. He breaks his fast with bread and honeyed wine, then sits with a stylus in hand, dictating responses to legal questions posed by clients' questions of inheritance, contract, property, guardianship. A freedwoman wonders whether she may remarry after her patron's death. A merchant disputes the weight of a delivered shipment. A landowner seeks guidance on a will, fearing its phrasing may be challenged by an ambitious cousin. The jurist considers each carefully, referencing older rulings, the 12 tables, and the writings of predecessors. He does not rush. The clarity of his counsel may determine not just outcomes, but precedent. His language is precise. Latin, honed to function more like stonework than poetry, every clause fitted tightly, every phrase with legal gravity. Later in the day, he may be summoned to consult with a magistrate, preparing a decision. Or perhaps attend a meeting of jurists working on codifying common practice efforts that would eventually evolve into Roman jurisprudence, the backbone of much modern Western law. He does not wear armor, he does not lead armies, yet emperors seek his opinion. His pen can preserve estates or unravel reputations. His afternoon passes in quiet study. Slaves bring scrolls from the library, laying them out in careful rows. He writes in wax and then in ink, reviewing his work aloud. Occasionally, he debates a colleague, testing logic, sharpening points, adjusting language. He may attend a dinner where legal riddles are posed for amusement, scenarios involving debts, dowries, and disputed oaths. These games are not light, but neither are they grim. They are intellectual exercises in a world where law binds empire more tightly than walls. As evening falls, he retires to his garden, walking among rosemary and laurel. He reflects on the subtle flow of justice, not as a sword, but as a guiding line through the chaos of life. And though his name may not appear on statues or triumphal arches, his words will live longer than stone. His opinions copied, cited, and absorbed into codes that stretch far beyond Rome's walls. This is elite life of a quieter, kind one, that shapes not the map of the empire, but the rules by which it breathes. Let us leave the city now. Leave the tiled roofs, the paved roads, the noise of carts and crowded markets. Follow the winding path through olive groves and past stone markers, out to the countryside where the rhythm of life is slower but no less demanding. You are standing in a field just beyond the Tiber, the morning air thick with dew. The sun is just cresting the hills, and already your tunic is damp with sweat. This is the life of a Roman farmer, not a wealthy estate owner watching from a veranda, but a tenant, a freedman, or perhaps even a smallholder clinging to a few inherited acres. The land is everything. It feeds your family, fuels your rent, and determines your place in the quiet social hierarchy of the countryside. Your hands are calloused, your fingernails lined with soil. You know the smell of wheat just before it ripens, the weight of a full amphora of olive oil, the way rain feels in dry ground after too long without it. The knowledge is not written, it is lived. You rise before first light. Your tools are simpler: wooden plow, a hoe, a curved blade for reaping grain, oxen if you can afford them. If not, your own shoulders must suffice. The soil must be broken, turned, seeded, watched. In spring, you prune vines. In summer, you irrigate and weed. In autumn, you harvest wheat, olives, grapes, depending on your soil, your fortune, your gods. In winter, you mend fences, prepare tools, and pray the stored grain will last. There is no room for error. A bad storm, a late frost, a swarm of pest seni could spell ruin. You may owe a portion of your yield to a landlord, or taxes to the state, or grain to the market. And after all that, your family must still eat. You may live in a small villa rustica, a rural farmhouse, with a single hearth and a roof of tile or thatch. Rooms are narrow, shared, and often filled with tools or grain. Children help where they can. Animals are kept close, not out of sentiment, but necessity. Neighbors are few, but known. During harvest, they may help you reap, and you them. Wine flows more freely in those days. Songs rise with the swinging of sighs. There is pride in the labor, even when the yield is thin. The calendar is marked not in festivals, but in tasks: sowing, pruning, pressing, mending. Always something. always the land. In the evening, your back aches. You sit on a stone near the doorway, eating a coarse loaf with some onions, maybe cheese. The stars are clearer here, far from the city's torch smoke. Crickets sing in the grass. The fields lie dark. This life is hard. There are no grand speeches, no statues, no silk, but there is rhythm, there is purpose, and for those who survive it, there is a kind of quiet pride. You don't live in Rome, but without you, Rome does not eat. Let us travel north now, into the forests of Germania thick with mist, tangled with pine and birch, far beyond the marble columns and wide roads of Rome. Here, in the year 09 CE, 3 Roman legions vanished into the trees, and with them the hopes of further conquest. At the center of this tragedy stood Publius Quinctilius. Verus was no fool, a seasoned politician, former governor of Africa and Syria, and trusted by Augustus himself. He had served the empire well, though he lacked military brilliance. When sent to govern the newly acquired provinces east of the Rhine, he believed peace had been secured. He was wrong. The tribes of Germania had not been conquered. They had been pacified, bribed, manipulated, but not defeated. Among them was Arminius, a chieftain's son raised in Rome, trained as a Roman officer, fluent in Latin, steeped in Roman tactics, and yet his loyalty lay with his people. Over months, Arminius carefully planned a trap. He fed Verus false reports of rebellion deeper in Germanic territory, the kind of unrest that required swift Roman response. Verus believed him. In September, he led 3 full legions, roughly 20,000 men into the Teutoburg forest, marching in column, stretched thin along narrow paths, burdened with baggage, expecting little resistance. Then came the rain. Heavy, cold, relentless. The forest turned to mud. The wagons slowed. Visibility dropped. Trees closed in. And then the first ambush. Arrows from the trees, spears from hidden ravines. The Germans struck in waves, vanishing between attacks. Roman formations broke down. Camps were makeshift. Discipline frayed. Panic crept in. For 3 days, the ambush continued. The Romans could not maneuver. Supplies dwindled. Morale collapsed. Verus, realizing the extent of the disaster, took his own life, falling on his sword. Officers followed suit. The legions were cut down, man by man. Few survived. When word reached Augustus, he was shattered. He is said to have paced his palace, crying out, "Quinctilius Verus, give me back my legions." He never attempted to reconquer Germania again. The battlefield was lost to time until the 1980s, when fragments of armor and coins were uncovered near Calcrease in modern-day Germany. Helmets, spearheads, skulls, silent reminders of those last desperate hours. Today, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest is seen as one of Rome's greatest defeats. It halted expansion into northern Europe. It shaped the boundaries of the empire, and it revealed starkly that even Rome could be humbled. Verus did not die in glory. He died betrayed, isolated, and blamed. But his story endures, not just as a lesson in arrogance, but as a testament to the limits of control. In the deep woods, beneath layers of leaves and centuries, his legions rest still and recovered, unnamed, remembered only by scattered bones and the rusted edge of a forgotten blade. Let us now consider something small. No grand monument, no burial site, no palace, just a curious object, palm-sized, forged of bronze, and found buried across the far corners of the Roman world. Smooth and hollow, with 12 flat faces, each pierced by a perfect, whole-land small knobs at every vertex. These are the Roman dodecahedra. Over 100 have been found, from Britain to Hungary, from Gaul to the Balkans, never in Italy itself, never with inscriptions, never with clear explanation. They are beautiful in their geometry, mathematically precise, crafted by skilled hands. Each one varies slightly. Some are just a few centimeters wide, others larger. Some holes are small, others wide, but they share the same basic form. Dodecahedron, 12 pentagonal faces, symmetrical, deliberate, and yet we do not know what they were for. Not truly. They are not mentioned in Roman texts, not in Pliny or Vitruvius or any of the encyclopedic minds that catalogued everything from farming tools to siege engines. These objects appear only in the archaeological record, not the literary one. So scholars have guessed. Some suggest they were tools, perhaps for measuring angles, distances, or light, a sort of primitive rangefinder. But their irregular hole sizes argue against precision use. Others believe they were used in textiles frames for knitting or sizing gloves, with yarn passed through the holes. The theory is plausible, but still unproven. Some call them candle holders, citing traces of wax found in a few specimens, but this, too, remains speculative. Then there are more symbolic theories, that they were religious instruments used in rituals or as scrying devices. Their design, undeniably geometric, could reflect astronomical or calendrical meanings. And some, embracing mystery fully, wonder if they were toys, objects of play or fortune, like dice, or perhaps teaching tools designed to spark curiosity in the young or the idle. Whatever their purpose, the dodecahedra resist explanation. They offer no writing, no clear useware, no fixed context. They are found in graves, in fields, in fort ruins, always quietly present, but never fully understood. And so they rest today in glass cases in museums, labeled with hesitant phrases, function unknown, possible measuring device, ritual object. But perhaps their value is in their refusal to be explained. In a world as structured as Rome's where everything had a name, a law, a place, these little objects are reminders that mystery survives. Hold one in your mind, feel its cool bronze weight, trace the edges, peer through the holes, and wonder, as others have for centuries, what thoughts and hands first shaped such a thing and why. Let us now shift from marble villas and bustling forums to a different kind of order, a world defined by rank, discipline, and ritual. We step into a Roman military camp, not a chaotic battlefield, but a meticulously arranged grid of roads, tents, and command posts. At its center lies the praetorium, the residence of a senior officer. This is elite life on the frontier. The camp is enclosed by ditches and earthen walls, topped with wooden palisades. Towers punctuate the perimeter, manned at all hours. But within, the layout is almost serene. Streets intersecting cleanly, barracks lined like teeth, stables, workshops, and storage rooms arranged with care. At the center, the officers' quarters, a small villa within the camp. The prefectus, or legatus commander, of the legionaries, is here with his aides and personal staff. His quarters are modest by urban standards, but spacious compared to the cramped tents of ordinary soldiers. Inside, there is warmth, a hearth, a few pieces of furniture, scrolls of correspondence, perhaps a statue of Mars or a bust of the emperor. A slave polishes a bronze oil lamp. Another prepares a basin of water for washing. The officer wakes early as the camp stirs. He begins his day with reports, patrols, supply counts, weather conditions, local intelligence. Messages arrive from scouts, diplomats, or tribal envoys. Every detail matters. Breakfast is small: bread, olives, perhaps a bit of cheese or dried fruit. No indulgence. The frontier demands focus. He dresses not in armor, but in a dark cloak and wool tunic, marked by his rank. Then comes the contubernium inspection. Soldiers are reviewed, formations adjusted, drills commenced. Orders must be given precisely, morale gauged, discipline maintained. If a building project is underway, a road, a fort wall, a bridged officer visits the site, observing the progress. Every Roman camp is also a construction site. The army builds as much as it battles. By midday, decisions must be made. Trial judgments for minor offenses, the assignment of duties, meetings with local leaders. A captured map is unrolled on a wooden table, annotated with ink and pebble weights. Lunch is taken quietly, sometimes alone. Occasionally, a visiting dignitary joins a provincial governor, a merchant, a foreign envoy. Wine is served, but never to excess. Conversation is careful. In the late afternoon, letters are dictated, updates to Rome, responses to requests, instructions to other camps. A scribe transcribes them in precise Latin, wax first, then ink. Evening brings a brief moment of calm. The officer may walk the Via Principalis, nodding to soldiers, watching the torches light one by one along the walls. The camp grows quieter. A bugle sounds, marking the changing of the guard. In his chamber, he reads, not poetry, though some do, but tactical manuals, reports, or philosophy. A bit of Seneca, perhaps, something to sharpen the mind. He sleeps in a proper bed, but with armor nearby. The frontier is never far from danger. Even the elite here live in a state of readiness. And yet, there is pride in this life. To command a legion is to embody Roman authority, to bring order to distant lands, to hold the line. It is a quieter, elite existence. No applause, no theater, no opulent banquets, but in its precision, its responsibility, and its endurance it is Roman to the core. The clamor of Rome does not always come from the forum or the barracks. Sometimes it comes from a courtyard tucked between buildings, the scent of clay and smoke rising softly into the midday air. This is the world of the potter. You are standing in a Figlina Roman pottery workshop. The sun filters through slatted beams above, dust swirling in the light. The floor is firm earth, packed by years of motion. Shelves line the walls, stacked with bowls, lamps, and amphorae in various stages of completion, some still damp, others dry and ready for firing. The potter begins early, before the heat becomes oppressive. His tunic is short, his hands calloused, his nails rimmed with dried clay. He sits at a simple wheel, a flat stone plate, turned by foot, balanced with care. A block of raw clay rests nearby, covered in damp cloth to keep it workable. He wedges the clay by hand, kneading it to remove air bubbles, pressing out imperfections. Then he centers it on the wheel. With a rhythm both slow and sure, he begins to shape. A bowl forms under steady fingers. The walls rise, thin and smooth. His eyes rarely move. His breath is steady. Pottery is not art for the sake of art. It is craft, function. Thousands of vessels are needed. Cups, oil lamps, plates, jugs, storage jars. Some are coarse, others finely decorated. Every home in Rome relies on the potter's hands, though few know his name. Apprentices prepare the clay, sweep the floors, carry pots to and from the kiln. The kiln itself stands in a rear chamber dome-shaped with a vented roof. It must be tended constantly. Too hot and the clay cracks, too cool and the glaze dulls. Firing is a delicate dance between flame and patience. Decorative pieces are etched or painted with slips of colored clay. A scene from myth, a border of ivy. Names, sometimes, or potter's marks scratched into the basa quiet signature left for posterity, whether recognized or not. Midday brings a brief rest, a crust of bread, perhaps dipped in oil, a cool drink of watered wine. The potter sits in the shade, wiping his hands on a cloth that has long since given up its original color. By afternoon, the wheel turns again. A series of oil lamps take shape small, rounded, with spouts for wicks. These are needed constantly. Rome runs on lamplight. As the sun lowers, the clay cools. The air smells of earth and smoke. Finished pots are stacked carefully, ready for market or delivery. Those flawed or cracked are set aside, not wasted, but broken and ground into shamet to strengthen future clay. The potter returns home weary, hands aching but satisfied. His work does not earn fame. His shelves will not appear in scrolls, but his vessels will hold wine at banquets, oil in temples, and grain in kitchens across the empire. Even emperors eat from clay, and in that quiet truth lies a thread that binds the humble to the powerful, one dish, one lamp, one pot at a time. We close this loop in the life of a man who walked more of the Roman world than most citizens ever saw, who built walls not only of stone, but of thought. Publius Aelius Hadrian, born in 76 CE in Hispania. Hadrian rose through family connection and quiet brilliance. A distant relative of Emperor Trajan, he was adopted as heir near the end of Trajan's reign. The succession was not smooth, but once in power, Hadrian acted swiftly and decisively. Unlike other emperors, he did not seek conquest. He withdrew from overextended fronts, abandoned the ambitions of expanding beyond the Euphrates. Instead, he fortified, secured, shored up the boundaries of empire, and focused inward. In Britain, he ordered the construction of a wall, Hadrian's wall, stretching across the northern width of the island, separating Roman territory from the unconquered lands beyond. It was more than a fortification. It was a statement. Here is Rome, and there is not. But Hadrian was not merely a builder of walls. He was a traveler. He spent more than half of his reign outside of Rome, touring the provinces on foot, by horse, and by sea. From the sands of Egypt to the forests of Gaul, from the temples of Athens to the hills of Judea, he listened, inspected, commissioned. He spoke Greek fluently, wore a beard in Hellenistic fashion, usual for a Roman emperor at the time, studied philosophy, debated with scholars, and built a library in Athens, aqueducts, temples, baths, cities. His villa at Tivoli became a sprawling microcosm of the empire, a garden of memories shaped in stone. Yet his reign was not without darkness. In Judea, rebellion flared. The Bar Kokhba, revolta, fierce and desperate uprising, was crushed with overwhelming force. Entire cities were razed, tens of thousands killed. Hadrian, in response, renamed the province Syria, Palestina, erasing Judea from the official maps. He also ruled with a clear sense of his own burden. Late in life, his health failed. He grew bitter, suspicious. Executions returned to the palace. His once liberal policies tightened. He named a distant relative, Antoninus Pius, as heir, but only on the condition that the young Marcus Aurelius be adopted in turn. In this, he ensured continuity, a dynasty of thinkers, not conquerors. Hadrian died in 138 CE at the age of 62. His ashes were interred in a grand mausoleum beside the Tibertha building that now stands as Castel Sant'Angelo. His memory lingered in architecture, in law, in the whispered thoughts of later emperors. He was not beloved by all. He could be cold, sharp, aloof, but he was thoughtful, measured, deeply aware of the scale of what he ruled and of its fragility. And in the long arc of empire, Hadrian marked a turning point, a pause, a breath, a moment of reflection on what it meant to govern not by the sword alone, but by structure, presence, and philosophy. He left behind not just buildings, but questions. What endures? What fades? What does it mean to rule wisely when even the wisest are shaped by time? And now we return. From crowded insulae to quiet villas, from muddy roads to marble courtyards, from the voices of emperors to the silence of the forgotten. We have wandered deep through the living breath of ancient Rome, not the Rome of triumphal arches and epic battles, but the Rome of washing pots, grinding grain, folding scrolls, and whispering prayers to unknown gods. It is a world of structure and strain, of elegance and hardship, of towering ambition built atop clay, sweat, and aching hands. A world where the powerful dined on golden plates and the poor shared tenement stairs. A world built by engineers, sustained by slaves, and dreamed of by scholars. You would not have survived it easily. And yet its traces remain chained into law, language, city plans, and quiet customs we no longer name. Rome never fully vanishes. It lingers beneath our feet, our calendars, even our thoughts. So now let your eyes close, if they haven't already. Picture the ancient lamps dimming, one by one. Picture the hush of Roman streets just before dawn. The last notes of a lyre echoing down a colonnade. The smell of bread baking far off in the early dark. History does not demand your attention. It is content to rest beside you. Thank you for listening tonight. If you found comfort in this journey, feel free to gently subscribe. And if you're still awake, I'd love to know where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it where you are. Leave a comment if you like, or don't. This space will be here when you return. For now, let the weight of ancient roads fall away. Let the stones soften, let the fire fade to embers, and let sleep come slowly and warmly, like the closing of a long, gentle scroll. Good night.